Well, thanks, Katie. Thanks for a lovely handover. It's actually Crosbie with a IE and not a Y as well. So I'm very special. And also never knew that Graham Goodkind had a tattoo. So that's a new one for me today. So welcome to the Winning Together panel discussion on the new world office culture. My name is Tobi Crosbie and I am the CEO and founder of Making Moves London. There isn't much I don't know about offices. I've been doing this for a very long time, but I must admit the last 18 months has tipped all that knowledge on its head. We're in a huge period of change, and whilst the world adapts, one thing is clear, that the office has changed forever. The way we use it and the actual physical space is really going to change. We're aware that the way that agencies are going to use their offices is going to vary. And we also know that BD teams sit at the heart of any agency and that buzz, collaboration are really vital to the success of those teams. So how will this impact in our new world? How will this be impacted in our new world? And what part will the office play? So today we're actually going to chat through some live examples from companies going through this period of dramatic change, as well as insights from Nabs into trends within the industry as a whole. And the four people we have on the panel are currently living through these times and have real life experience of the current period of change. So without further ado, let me introduce our panel. Firstly, we have Rebecca Brennan, who is Head of Marketing and Partnerships at Kyan. Hi, Rebecca.
Hi everyone.
And we also have Sharon Richey, who is Global MD of Because Creative Experiences. Hi, Sharon.
Hi, guys. Hi, everyone.
And I believe you're in South Africa. Is that right? Showing that technology works.
I am.
You don't have to work in the office all the time.
I am. And just at this very moment, Toby, the sun has shone directly through my window.
Oh, wow.
So I didn't have that planned. I didn't have that planned, everyone, to make you feel envious. I'll try and move my screen around.
And thirdly, we have Diana Tickell, the CEO of Nabs, the support organisation for people working in advertising and media. Hi, Diana. How are you?
Very good. Thank you. Hello, everybody.
Good. And last, but of course not least, we have the wonderful Hamish Allan, a colleague of mine and head of Making Moves Technical, who advise our clients on the design and layout of their offices. So hi, Hamish.
Hey, everybody.
How's WeWork?
WeWork's just lovely. I've managed to get myself camped up in a little meeting room here, so all good.
Good. So I guess to kick things off, I'd like to start with a series of questions just focused around the physical office space. And my first question goes to Rebecca. How have you approached the return to the office so far in 2021? And what's your kind of plans going forward for 22?
Okay, a good question, because quite a difficult one to answer, actually, because we're not really seeing a return of the office. And in fact, quite quickly at Kyan, we made the decision that we would keep our office, but we would have a distributed workforce. So actually, our plan is we're seeing the office as a place that people can come to when they want to. We're seeing it as a place that they can work. And we're trying to create it as a bit of a destination rather than just a place like an office. So we're pretty much embracing this distributed team and trying to figure out how we make the culture work, because obviously it poses some challenges. So I guess we're not seeing it as a return. Mm-hmm. We're seeing it as a long-term change. And I think we've got some interesting plans afoot for 2022.
Interesting. Are you allowed to reveal any of those at the moment, or are they hidden away?
Well, do you know what? I'm definitely going to be speaking to Graham from Frank PR, because he had some great ideas. But I guess we're rebranding. It used to be the Kyan Studio, and we're actually branding it as the Kyan Clubhouse. So we're creating it. We're really beginning to treat it as a destination, and it's been quite interesting brainstorming the kinds of things that we can do, because we've got a fantastic office. We've got a big space. And we're not going to use it in the same way. You know, we don't need rows of desks, because when people come in, it's normally because they're collaborating. Occasionally people want to kind of work in a quiet space, but on the whole, they're coming in to be with other people. So let's kind of redesign our space to be about that, I guess.
Yeah. And Sharon, over to you. I'm conscious, I know you have a kind of live case study of a dramatic change in the way that you are working going forward. Do you want to kind of run us through that? What your plans are for 21 and 22?
Yeah, I think in answer to your question about 2021, our approach is not dissimilar to Rebecca's, in that we have had a sort of a slow return to the office, and then many people have chosen to work from home and do still work from home. So we've been very flexible and will continue to be flexible. At this sort of point of the year, Tobi, we're very much looking at 2022. It feels like 2021 is already behind us, and we're starting to shape what does next year look like for us. And we had, as a business, quite a difficult situation in that we moved into new offices right next door to Richmond Station at the start of 2019. And we moved into this wonderful sort of big office space and spent an absolute fortune making it feel like home. And we're very proud of the space, and we had every intention of being there, not just for 5 years, but for 10 years. We were there for the long haul. And then for sort of fast forward, not just, just over a year, and COVID came along. And, having always had fantastic offices, for probably the last sort of 10, maybe even 15 years, the offices for us have always been a shop window and something which we're really proud of. And suddenly what was once so great for us and a bit of a home from home became nothing more than a ball and chain. Because when the team did return to work, we've spent months trying to shift the furniture around, rework the zones, turn the sort of large meeting room into a play zone. Because the reality is that if only 20% of your team are actually choosing to work from the office 1 or 2 days a week, what was once a really lively and buzzy type of environment became a bit like, a ghost town. And I know the previous panel spoke a lot about agencies being fun and having that cocktail hour, but it's very hard to keep the vibe alive in a building when it's actually empty. So to answer your question, when we started to think about 2022, we had sort of 3 words in mind which structured our approach, and we thought about flexibility, fluidity, and freedom. And nowadays, business has to be agile and it has to be fluid because the world which we work within is forever changing. So we did something which I learned at a business college a few years ago called sunk fallacy. And we just said, we've spent this money, but let's move on from it. We don't need this ball and chain any longer. And I spent almost 18 months negotiating our way out of our lease, which was a very hard thing to do, and it cost a lot of money. Yeah. Don't ever do it, but if anyone ever has to do it, please reach out to me and I'm happy to advise. It almost took 400 pages of legal documents, but we got there. And only as of last week, I was in London and we moved into a co-working space. And I think when the whole sort of WeWork and co-working space first hit the industry a few years ago, it was very much, the place where startups or, smaller boutique agencies would sort of hang their hat. And it was, that was the heartland for those type of businesses. So for us, we as a management team had to very much have a reset, and we had to see it as a progressive move and not a regressive move. And we actually moved into an office space which is 10% of the size of what we once had. And but the reset is that we're no longer responsible for our own office. We now have an office within an office, and I cannot begin to tell all of you listening in on this panel how unbelievably liberating it is not to have to deal with why aren't people pushing the chairs in of the meeting room? There's no toilet paper. Where's the coffee? What size slices of bread should we have? What's the office temperature? So it feels, it's obviously very early days, but we wanted the flexibility and we wanted to be more agile as a business, and we wanted to have a space. We've got 20 desks in a much smaller space now, but we can grow very, very quickly. It's a very adaptable space, and I think that's going to work very well for our London office moving forwards.
Yeah, and I guess that's been a real trend we've seen actually across the market, is just that desire for flexibility. And that change in terms of environment, not wanting their own space quite so much, but just having a great space where people can collaborate and be together, but without the hassle of, as you say, having to supply coffee. That's already done for you. There's been a real big push for that, and interestingly, the likes of companies like WeWork that were in a really bad place before the pandemic are actually starting to are starting to benefit from this market because they provide the product that people want now, and not just smaller businesses, larger businesses as well. So we're hearing that quite a lot through the market. So thanks for that, Sharon.
Yeah.
Diana, in terms of your in relation to kind of physical office space, have you seen any trends emerging from the companies that you've been speaking to?
Yeah, I think this flexibility is coming through as the main link, but there's quite a big emphasis on the 3-2-2-3. So it's sort of 3-2-2-3 with flexibility. Maybe some organisations much more keener to get people back. Others saying the distributed workforce, like Rebecca said, are working very, very flexibly. I think the importance of collaboration is what people are looking for within their spaces. That's coming through really, really significantly. It's a purposeful time together. When do we want people together? And just being able to do that. I think some of the models that seem to be working better are when people are focusing on what they need to do together rather than which days and how many days. So the Publicist model, which was talked about quite a long time ago, I think it's probably been going for a year, which is this heads together, heads up, heads down, which is to sort of covers different styles of working and when you need to be together, seems to be working really well. The heads together bit brings people in for things they need to do together, like pitches. Heads down is when you need some quiet space. And then heads up is when they're all coming together for team meetings, but it's mainly virtual. So that seems to be creating a buzz on more days in the agency. You get that natural buzz back for the days that people are collaborating, and needed some bit of investment still, I think, in tech to actually make some of the mixed hybrid sessions working. But flexibility, some people aren't even back yet. Some people are whenever, sometime January.
Yeah, that's another thing we're actually hearing a fair amount of. Is it feels that the more the press hype up another lockdown, the longer that period gets for people to return to the office. So it was September. It now feels like January is the date when people are starting to put or think about putting things into play. Definitely. Thanks, Diana. And Hamish, just over to you. Similar question, but I guess just looking at obviously we don't just deal with agencies. We have a wider breadth of clients, and I just wondered, is there any sort of trends coming out of other sectors that you've seen, or other making clients, what they're up to at the moment?
Yeah, no, there definitely is, and it's really interesting to hear that Rebecca, Sharon, and Diana have already mentioned some of the key trends that we're already seeing as well. And Sharon, I think I might have to steal your 3 Fs: flexibility, fluidity, freedom. I think I might take that one on board. Love that. But yeah, I think generally speaking, the whole office and workplace trend has really been driven by the pros and cons of home working. I think most business owners and leadership teams have really kind of got to grips with how they want the business to be run, and sort of whilst balancing that with employee preferences as well. But I think it's important to say that there's no real one size kind of fits all in this type of sort of workplace setting. There definitely needs to be a bespoke approach to kind of suit each individual business and how each individual business wants to work. But yeah, happy to go through a few sort of the key trends that we're seeing. So starting off with some of the more obvious ones, I think less space is a key one. But I think it's important to mention that it's less space per person as well. Most businesses are adopting some form of hybrid system, and that's obviously has the impact of just needing less space. I think more established businesses with an established headcount are generally looking to take less space. They're just having a similar headcount in a reduced footprint. But equally, we're working with quite high growth businesses as well. So quite often they're taking more space and growing as a business, and taking more space but less space per person. So just allowing to kind of cater for that growth. I think less desks is the next obvious one. There's just not the same amount of people in the office or in the workplace that are looking just to sit at a desk all day. And a lot of those desks are getting replaced with more collaboration space. Depending on the business, collaboration needs can vary a lot. A lot of businesses still prefer traditional closed meeting space. but more creative businesses and more creative agencies prefer to sort of design different types of collaboration space within the open plan area, whether that's sort of scrum spaces or just sort of more agile working areas and places for teams to kind of get together within the open plan areas. I think generally, more social space. I think it's been clearly identified that sitting at home is not good for social interaction. So enabling that within the workplace is absolutely key, and providing a good facility that kind of allows staff to do that when they come into the workplace is key, but also creating an attractive space that pretty much entices them to get them out of their home and get them into the workplace and actually encourage that social interaction. I think a more recent point that a lot of businesses are trying to identify as part of a workplace redesign is trying to incorporate more bespoke HR and sort of private meeting spaces. I think it's really difficult to connect on a more of a personal and emotional level over video conference and virtual meetings. So, enabling that within the workplace is really key, and getting that proper face-to-face time. Library and sort of quiet working areas. I think some of the other ladies have already sort of discussed this, and having a key or quiet areas to work within the workplace are key. I think most businesses are trying to encourage people to do that at home, so that element of focused working at home. But again, more recently, leadership teams have identified that not everyone's in a fortunate position to have a focused working area within their own home, whether they're flat sharers or house sharers, and sharing with multiple people or working at home. There's just not that quiet space to work at. So incorporating that into the workplace again is absolutely key. And again, I think this theme was already there was a movement before COVID and the pandemic hit, but the introduction of sort of multifunctional spaces, whether that's for sort of wellbeing or meditation or multi-faith and praying rooms and mothers' rooms, that was definitely happening pre-pandemic, but there's definitely the whole COVID part has accelerated that now, and we're seeing a lot more of that type of space being incorporated into the design. Lastly, but not least, I think it's important to mention dogs. As a dog owner myself, we're seeing a lot more dogs within the workplace. Luckily, we don't really need to sort of think about them in too much in terms of like how we actually design workplace. But yeah, it's really nice to see, and I think that whole mental health well-being part, the fact that we're just sort of seeing dogs within the workplace is great. Just got to be conscious of people's allergies and that sort of thing. But yeah, no, nice to see our furry friends in the office. Yeah,
agreed. And Hamish, just on the size you mentioned, I mean, there are extremities, but is there a kind of range in terms of percentages in terms of that reduction in size that we're seeing across the board? Is there any sort of feel for that?
Yeah, I think the 3-2 split that we've already talked about naturally lends itself toward sort of 40 to 60% reduction in space. But we're seeing extreme examples of that to being sort of 80%, and depending on ultimately it depends on what stage a business is in its growth as well. Yeah. But yeah, I think anywhere ranging from sort of 20 to 80%, but probably more around sort of 40% was probably about the norm we're seeing. Yeah.
Okay. No, fine. Thanks for that, Hamish. Really, really useful. The second topic I just wanted to touch on there is a magical word that we hear the whole time, particularly doing offices at the moment, but also if you're in the market to buy an electric car, and that word is hybrid. It seems to be everyone definitely the buzzword of 20 to 21. Rebecca, I know you mentioned your kind of new policy and the way that you're approaching. Yeah. Was that word mentioned in your process to get back to the office?
I think it's a word we have talked about, and it's kind of a challenge actually. I think how we describe kind of the way we work is not remote, because we don't like the kind of connotations with remote. It feels like we're not together. So we're definitely about being distributed. So we've got a distributed workforce. And in fact, we talk about it as one of our benefits, work from wherever you want. That's kind of a key kind of benefit about kind of Kyan. I guess what that does pose as a challenge is the situation where you get into this hybrid. Some people are in the office, some people are at home. And I think where that kind of challenges us is when we've got certain meetings, because how it's quite difficult to hold a meeting when some people are together and some people are not. So I actually really liked what Diane was just talking about. I think you said it was publicists in terms of their heads together, heads up and heads down. I think what we haven't labeled it in that way, but I think that's what we're trying to encourage. We're trying to say, if we're not trying to tell people when they have to be in the office, we're letting people have that choice, that flexibility, but we're hoping and guiding people to make the right choice. If you're working on a pitch, it makes a lot of sense to all be together. So let's find a way of how we make that happen. So we're not telling people when to come in, but we are recommending that when it's quality time, we're encouraging people to come in. Okay. So we have kind of quarterly meetings to review how are we doing as an agency. And that's a key moment where we're saying, actually, we should all come together. We're not going to force you, but we'd really like it. And actually, we're going to not only kind of give you an update on what's happening, we're also going to do something sociable. So I guess we're having more kind of planned moments that matter. And I guess that's how we're trying to address hybrid, because there are some kind of negative impacts of hybrid. But I guess there's some answers as well. How do we kind of redesign our space? How do we redesign our ways of working to accommodate for this new way? And I guess that's what we're kind of thinking of. And, you know, how can technology help us? Because at the moment, you've got some people on Zoom, some people sitting around a table, doesn't work, but there has to be better ways. And hopefully, you know, technology can support us. So I think we're looking at how do we design our space? How do we design our ways of working? Yeah,
I think that's the key, the technology part, definitely. It's just not there yet. I mean, it kind of is there, but I totally agree. Trying to have meetings with people where you've got some people remote and some people in the room is a real challenge. And I think it's trying to get those people that aren't in the room involved in the room is where the real headache is.
I tell you where it's actually really helped, actually, because I think there's flip sides, isn't there? We've been doing some training recently, and we've been involving the whole agency. And some people said, "Oh, I've booked a meeting room, so some of us are going to be kind of in a meeting room together." And I said, "No, actually, let's all do it remote, because you can use the breakout rooms." And that's been really great, because we can kind of quickly go into a breakout room for 5 minutes, and then you can kind of force people back into the main session. Whereas imagine trying to do that in a physical sense. First of all, we're going to need like about 15 meeting rooms for people to drift off into and trying to get back to the main session. It would never happen in the same way. So there's lots of benefits for us as well in working in a kind of on Zoom in using that technology. So
yeah. No, that's fair enough. And Sharon, anything on your side? Anything to add there in terms of hybrid working?
Yeah, I think the same, very similar to Rebecca, in that, again, it goes back to the flexibility, fluidity, and freedom. We very much, as Rebecca, we have a lot of flexibility within the working week. Although what I would say is that we have a little bit more structure in that we have, after testing and learning, you know, from a couple of different scenarios, we've got a bit more structure in that we have Wednesday and Thursday as being the 2 days where it's mandatory to be in the office. And because we've moved offices, we're obviously updating everyone's employment contracts, and we've put some clauses in around to how to work with COVID and what is our bonus structure for 2022. And we've also written into employment contracts, you know, what is the approach going to be for hybrid working. And ours is not a formal environment. I don't know any agency which is, but I just felt that they needed to be a little bit of formality around what the expectations of, you know, both of everyone could be. So for us, Toby, we have 2 days a week in the office as mandatory. Those 2 days are always a Wednesday and a Thursday, and that's when we have I love, again, like Rebecca, I love the heads together, heads down and heads up. So thank you, Diana, for sharing that. I think we all scribbled that down, and we'll be copying that ourselves. But for us, Toby, having those 2 days in the office together, we know that is when we can schedule all of our internal meetings. That's when we can have our potluck lunch once a month. That's when we can have our socials. And it actually saves a hell of a lot of organizing when you know that actually those 2 days of the week, everybody will be in. What we have said to people is that we'll constantly be reviewing it. It might go up to 3 days, but in the now it's 2, and it's working incredibly well for the business. And if we do review it, we'll give people a month's notice, because, you know, we've obviously got to consider that many of us within the agency have young children, and we've got childcare, which we need to plan ahead. So again, with childcare, I think it works better for us, Rebecca, having everybody knowing that I've got to be in the office Wednesday and Thursday, so I'll sort my childcare out on those 2 days. And it means that when we do have our meetings, it just makes it logistically a lot easier for it to happen.
Okay. Thanks on that. The hybrid world continues, and it's interesting that I think it's here to stay, but it's going to evolve over time with technology. I think is how it almost feels like that needs to catch up for it to work properly. But what I wanted to move on to now is more around cultural changes and the well-being of staff in the new office world. And Diane, I wanted to come to you on this. Across the industry, obviously, it's been a really testing time across the world, across different sectors. But what do you think are the main challenges facing the industry in these uncertain times, or as we come out of the pandemic?
We've seen some really massive impact and changes on people's well-being during this time. I think the most important thing we all have to remember, whether we're a manager, a leader, or a colleague, is that everybody's been through something quite challenging, and it impacts on everybody completely different. So a bit of self-compassion, looking after ourselves and appreciating what we've been through, and compassion for others. And we are still in it. I think, you know, the flexibility that everybody's talking about today is brilliant, and people will need different things. People have been through furlough. They were on furlough for months, some people. The calls to Nabs went through the roof in terms of people being needing advice for being made redundant. So even though there's furlough, there was still a lot of redundancies. Working parents, Sharon just mentioned, supporting working parents had one of the most difficult times. So just making sure that as we come back, we are really, really looking after the well-being of our teams, and that and supporting our managers in that, because managers are the ones who are right at the front of that and need as much support as they can to support their teams. So I think any support and advice and training, sort of invest in managers now, would be absolutely key. Right now, there's a lot of anxiety about the return to the office, but people are a bit jaded. Burnout is coming through. Redundancy calls have stopped to Nabs now, which is not stopped, but reduced significantly. And that's good, because everybody's recruiting again like mad. But the calls that have now gone up is emotional support. So it's coping with it. People are not particularly motivated at the moment. They're really finding it hard. We've been working like this for a long time. So very much looking after our people, and sort of just another reflection on what people have been through in this last sort of 18 months. Our colleagues who had personal experiences because of Black Lives Matter, or even intergenerational experiences of things like Black Lives Matter, have been through a very, very difficult time, personal trauma, and our work that we've all started to improve everything we're doing for DE&I in our industry, to be active allies to our colleagues and making our workplaces completely safe for everybody. Even Time 2 is still working on trying to prevent sexual harassment. It was still going on virtually. As people are coming back, they're worried about it. So we've got a lot to do. Are our offices safe? Are we looking after people as well as we could? Be the best we can, and particularly as we start as an industry, we're already moving on to talking about climate change and the industry's impact on climate change. Let's not leave the DE&I behind. You know, we mustn't move on to the next new thing. And so I think there's just so much we need to do. Is just carrying people through this next sort of 6 months is going to be really important.
Yeah. And do you think that if there was any anything good to come out of a pandemic. I don't know if that's actually the right way to put it, but that these things maybe have been highlighted a little bit more and are now getting more press, or the press that they should have got prior to the pandemic.
I think things are accelerating, and we move quicker. And as an industry, we're also brilliant at responding to a crisis. So I think, the crisis that we all experienced watching the murder of George Floyd, everything that's happening now with the climate, this industry does respond. We just need to make sure we stick at it, and we have the energy and the pace and the ideas to really, really lead. So I'm excited about the ability that we can continue to do what we're doing and doing it well. So fingers crossed, we'll keep at it.
Yeah. No, it's good to hear. And just over to Rebecca, you probably, I'm sure, from a business perspective, can resonate with some of what Diana is saying. But has there been any cultural changes facing your company in general to work, in that return to work?
I think there's a couple of things, and it was prompted when Diana was just talking about kind of well-being. One of the things that it seems it's a thing you kind of overlook, and then you suddenly realize and you go, yeah. So what we've got, because we've got this distributed team, they come into the office, and some people are regular. They come into the office. It's pretty normal to come to the third floor and walk into the office. They're used to it. The people that live in different places that don't come to the office very often, it's actually quite intimidating. Because they're not used to it anymore. They're not used to kind of walking in. We've got a fantastic office, but you kind of walk in and there's kind of the coffee area, and then you're kind of in the middle of it. And the best way I describe it, it's like, for people that aren't used to it, it's like going to a party that you're not invited to, because you kind of go in and go, hello, and you don't really know what to say. So I think from a cultural point of view, some of the small things about how do you actually make it easy for people to come into the office, and I mean, joking aside, we were saying the other day, maybe we announce people when they're coming in, welcome to the office, a big round of applause, just to kind of diffuse the situation, because when you're used to it, you forget it's actually quite a bit of a moment, and it's a bit awkward for people. So we've kind of stumbled on some of these small things that we're trying to address. And I think that's been really interesting. I think the other challenge for us is we've got a really strong culture, and Kyan, we got recognised this year for best places to work, and we've spent a lot of time building a great culture, and this has been a real test. How do we evolve the culture and keep it great? And I think the way that we do that is by keeping in touch with our people, understanding what's important to them, how things have changed. And if you take our benefits package, we totally changed our benefits package to be kind of more appropriate for the new way. And things like, we used to have lots of access to local gyms and stuff like that. Well, there's no point in doing that anymore. So we've given people a working from home budget to do things, make their space nicer. We do a lot more around, we used to go out for coffee more. We don't. So we send to the team. So we've totally looked at a different way of doing benefits. We're kind of investing in bringing in new people to help us kind of build a culture. And when we say you can work from wherever you want, and we're not forcing people to come in, we have to think, well, how do we build this culture when you're sometimes not even in the same country? I mean, it's great from a recruitment point of view, because, we used to recruit within like a 20-mile radius. Now we've got people in Wales, Spain, Switzerland. I mean, it's great because from a cultural point of view, they're all bringing different perspectives. Yeah. But we have to work really hard. It's not just, and that's a good thing. Culture doesn't just happen when you've got people all over the place. You have to work. You have to think about it. Well, I think you should do that anyway. So it's forcing us to stop, think. It's forcing us to have conversations. It's forcing us to ask questions like, oh, is it a bit awkward when people walk in the office? Yes, it is. Yep. What are we going to do about it? So I think it's made us like really analyze ourselves and say, how can we be better?
Yeah. Yeah. And Sharon, anything else that you guys are doing, or anything else that you found challenging?
Yeah, I think probably maybe not necessarily challenging, but going back to your point about well-being, you know, the reality is, Toby, is that we are all very unique and we're all very different, and you know the way we work best is different. And one of the things which we've really tried to work hard at recognizing at Because is giving people freedom within their working day and their working week. You know, I'm mom to young kids, and for me, being able to drop the kids at school and maybe go and watch a hockey match, or in South Africa obviously rugby is a big thing, to go and watch rugby is really important. So if anyone doesn't know me very well, they'll think, oh my lord, this woman is online or working for 14 hours a day. But the reality is I'm not at my desk for 14 hours a day. So I might start early and then I'll disappear and then I'll come back again. And you know, I manage my own schedule. I work when I can work, and I have moments in my day when I'm focusing, moments in my day when I'm doing admin, and I've developed a rhythm and a pace to my day which suits me. And that's something which we've really tried to encourage across, because to say everybody is different and different things matter to different people. Somebody wants to go for might want to go for a run at the start of the day. Somebody might find it really important. They might want to take their dog for a walk at lunchtime. But it's about respecting everyone's time and respecting that everyone is different, and giving your team the freedom within their day. And what really matters is, are people working hard? Are they trying hard? Are they adding value? And what's their output? How they then choose to work during the course of the day is almost somewhat irrelevant. So again, we do have some structure, because I think having a little bit of structure helps just make it easier to manage. And we try, and one point is we don't have any internal meetings after 2:00. So we have a daily huddle. Everybody is asked to be on our huddle at 9:00 every single morning, and that is mandatory. You have to be on it. It's only for 15 minutes. It's a quick sort of stand up around the room, obviously all done virtually. And the huddle lasts for 15 minutes, so that's 9 a.m. And then we say no internal meetings scheduled after 2:00. So we have a little bit of a structure to the day. And then what people choose to do during the course of the day is up to them, because they have their own clients, their own deadlines, and their own working patterns. So I think for us, when we talk about well-being, it goes back to that word freedom, and it's giving, trusting your team and giving them freedom to work in the manner in which they can work best. And I'm just conscious of time, but I want to say one last thing, which I'm really excited about from a cultural shift point of view, is that I've always been really, really sad to say goodbye to some amazing women in the industry. And I am generalizing here, but often it is, when somebody has a child, it is the woman who will stay at home and stop working, because it's really hard to drop your child at the nursery at 8:00, hop on the train, pay for the nursery fees, pay British Rail, get to the office at 9, put in a full day's work, get back and get your kid. And that's really, really difficult for someone to do. And it's not easy to have great work-life balance when you've got those challenges. And what I'm so excited about is, I think that actually now that people are culturally going to be able to work from home and it's the accepted norm, all those wonderful women out there who got to account director level and then left the industry because it just became so hard for them to manage to juggle, as they have had to when they had a small baby. Hopefully those women are going to stay in the industry, and that will mean that we will have more of a gender balance in the senior roles, and that's something I'm really excited about.
Yeah, no, and that's definitely a big change, isn't it? That's going to happen in this new world, is just that that shift, or allowing people to do that and work from home and be able to do that. So I know, even as a father, it's been great to take my children to nursery, or my child to nursery in the morning. It never would have done that. It wasn't even in your mindset to do that. So it's a big change. So we are close to our time. We have 5 minutes left. We actually have one, or I guess it's one question, which if there are any more, please do send them through. Just while we're waiting to see if anyone else does come through with any questions, Hamish, I just wanted to ask you from our client perspective, how are they focusing on well-being? Like, what's the general message? Is that now at the forefront of any kind of like design of an office? Are they focusing on the well-being side?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think without in the pre-pandemic times, it was something that personally I always feel quite passionate about, and try to challenge some of the clients we work with in terms of trying to make sure it's incorporated into design. But I feel it's very much coming forward without being asked or challenged on it now. And I think some of the bits we talked about earlier around making sure there's some sort of wellbeing space, that whole return to work and anxiety about coming back to the workplace. I think that's been identified, and having that sort of space just to get away from everyone else within the office and just go and chill and gather your thoughts, I think is a really important part. And similar with meditation space and the sort of multi-faith rooms and all those sort of other use cases within the office, which are important to incorporate, are definitely coming forward without being asked now, which is great to see.
Yeah. No, it's good to hear. So we have one question here, which is from Katie Street, and it seems to be really hard to get the flexibility some of us want or need. Not so much a question, but a recommendation. Where can I find a space in London where we can head in ad hoc and have a collaborative working space? All the places I know want fixed days, people, etc. Their flexi models either don't exist or are already full. I think you've actually come up with a new business idea there, because I actually don't know any myself, to be honest with you. There are a couple of businesses that are trying to launch models, but at the moment that product doesn't really exist. I think, Hamish, I don't know if you know of any, but certainly not on my side.
No, there's definitely options, but slightly more rigid options of advanced booking and not sort of offering the flexibility that I think Katie's talking about there. So yeah, no, let's have a look at it.
Just a thought. There's plenty of agencies that are looking to kind of sublet some of their space. So I'd be finding a friendly agency that's got a couple of spare desks and a meeting room, and be talking to those guys.
Yeah, there we go. Okay, so I think we've come to an end, unless anybody else has got anything else they wish to say. We don't unfortunately have any more questions, so I think we'll call it a day there. So thank you to all the panel for your contributions, Rebecca, Sharon, Diana, and Hamish. It's been a pleasure.